I wasn't shopping, I was preparing. A list in my pocket, a secret pounding in my chest. Makeup, shoes, strange materials no one would question, but every piece was part of something bigger. By the time I reached the workshop, the foam, the blade, and the silence were waiting. Each cut, each adjustment brought me closer to the moment I had dreamed of, but never dared to claim. When I finally slipped it against my body, I knew. This wasn't just a disguise. It was the first step into a life I could no longer walk away from. The next morning, I used a cream to remove all of my body hair from the eyebrows down, then took a shower, watching as my hair washed down the drain. My skin was smooth and soft after the application of a lotion to replace the oils lost using the cream. By the time I was in my bedroom, I wanted to do this more than ever. I tucked myself and slipped on a pair of plain white panties, then pulled on the specialty item I had created. Over that, I pulled on a pair of maternity panties. The bra was a nursing type, in 38C. I patted the cups with my custom-made silicone-filled breast forms and felt the heavy weight of them as they sagged against the shoulder straps. I went to the bath and began my makeup. I used the minimum needed to cover his beard and not look caked on, then a powder to set it and give me a matte finish to my skin. A light bit of blue eyeshadow and black eyeliner. A black pencil was used under my eyes. I smiled at my reflection and went back in my room to pull on the maternity jumper. It was pink and white with white lace trim, full-skirted with straps that went over my shoulders. Under it, I wore a thin white pullover sweater. I stepped into the white flats and went to do my hair. It was quite long now, after having let it grow for almost a year. I brushed it out first, then braided my hair into one long ponytail that ran down my back. I used a pink bow at the end. Looking in the mirror, I was satisfied that I looked like a lot of young mothers, and grabbed my purse. It now contained all of my identification, money, a brush, and a small mirror. I left the house and went for my first appointment. I had planned this well in advance, taken a week vacation, and made all of my appointments. My first stop was the beauty shop where I was having the works done. Haircut, colored and styled, my nails done, and a facial. From there, I was going to see a friend of mine that had known about my secret since we were in high school. In fact, this was only the second time I had been out as a pregnant woman. The first time the two of us had both done it at the same time. The woman that did my hair dyed it strawberry blonde, then cut quite a bit of it off. My nails were made longer and done in a soft pink. My makeup was perfect. The woman that did it was a genius using makeup. She made me look 5 years younger. She coached me on how to do it myself. Then I bought exactly what she had used. By the time I left the salon, I looked and felt like a young mother. My friend worked at a local dress shop nearby, and when I walked in, she did not recognize me. The changes were so dramatic. I walked with a slight waddle, the weight I had added to my prosthetic device, making me feel as if I were sloshing, just like a real baby would do to a new mother. At age 22, I wasn't that old, and I looked my part very convincingly. I smiled as my friend came over and asked if she could help me find anything. "I was looking for you, actually. Now that I'm pregnant again, I thought you should know." She looked at me for a moment before the light dawned and she realized who it was. "Lisa, I haven't seen you since high school. You look great." I blushed, and Amy took me by the hand, then into the back of the store. Amy looked at me and smiled, because she knew just how much I liked being pregnant. "It doesn't look like this is a one-day thing, Lisa." "It's not. I have a whole week to be myself, and I intend to enjoy every minute of it. I stopped by to catch up and see you." We hugged again, and Amy told her boss she was going to lunch with an old woman, a friend. She could see that my expression of a pregnant woman was perfect this time. She said that I even seemed to glow a little. We had a wonderful lunch, and I loved every minute of it. Because I wasn't actually pregnant, of course. I wore a belt with a small rubber ball that pressed hard against my bladder, which made me pee a lot. Amy thought it was such an original idea that she bought me another coffee. Amy had to go back to work, but she promised that she would stop by later in the week. After lunch, I waddled out of the mall and went home. That night, I wore everything but the jumper and sweater to bed. My nightgown flowed like a cloud around me whenever I moved. Twice I had to get up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom. My sister Megan was not expected, so when I heard the doorbell ring, I answered the door without a thought. When I opened it and my sister saw me, she almost fainted. She checked the house number and turned back to look at me. I was wearing another jumper, this one baby blue with small teddy bears all over it. My blouse was plain white, open to show most of my now huge cleavage. Megan looked at me, saw that my makeup and hair were done very nice, and my nails were professionally done. "Can I come in?" I opened the door and stood aside. Sweat was beginning to form on my back, but Megan gave me a hug, then held me at arm's length. "You look so pregnant. Beautiful, but pregnant." I led her to my small family room and sat down, my legs apart like so many pregnant women. "Want to tell me about it? Just what do I call you?" I used the name Lisa. I paused, trying to find a way to explain the unexplainable. "I guess I have always been fascinated by pregnant women, and I even went out once this way in high school. It was a real trip, I can tell you. Now I have the chance, and the money, so I planned it out, and here I am." My sister looked at me with those soft blue eyes of hers and saw that I was quite serious about being a pregnant woman, so she decided to try something. "When is the baby due?" I hadn't thought about that because my pregnancy was only supposed to last a week. "I don't know, Megan. I hadn't thought about it." "Well then, have you fixed up a nursery yet?" A shake of my head, no. "A baby shower?" Another no. "Let's see then. An unwed mother with no nursery, no baby things, no friends to have a baby shower, and no due date. That doesn't sound like very many new mothers I know of." She looked at me and shook her head. "You need to have a better plan, Lisa. Maybe you should start at the beginning." I looked at her with a question in my eyes. A single woman that puts out and gets herself pregnant dummy. That means living as a woman for a while and attracting a man to plant the seed, then waiting to see if you get pregnant, or if you were lucky. You can't just start out pregnant, you know. In high school, before I went out pregnant, Amy and I used to cruise as two girls, and I always was good at attracting guys to the car, even if all they did was tease us. Amy and I gained a reputation as teasers and had even been talked about in school. I myself had heard some of the guys talking about Amy and her cute friend. That's when I started thinking about being pregnant. "You mean you want me to start living as a woman?" "Sure. Then you can find just the right guy to be the father of your baby. That means that I'll have to." "All women do it, Lisa, and all mothers certainly have. Have you ever considered starting at the beginning? Live as a woman, date, and get used to being a woman before you show up pregnant?" "No." "Why not? I remember how you looked when we were in high school, and I heard all those rumors about Amy and her cute friend, which had to be you. If you could do it, then you can do it now, and I know that you have enough money to last a few years without working, so why not? I knew I could afford it, and being able to go out with Amy as a regular woman again would be fun." "Okay, Megan, but I'm not letting some guy do that to me. We can fake that part." "I'll be back tomorrow, and we will go shopping for your new wardrobe. Why don't you call in and quit?" The thought of doing what Megan suggested brought back some very fond memories, and decided she was right. That night, as I undressed, I was relieved to remove the rubber ball pressing on my bladder. I showered and then pulled out my few regular woman clothes. I found a few skirts and blouses, a single bra that looked pretty bad, and I knew I would be shopping pretty soon. As I was cleaning up, Amy and Megan were on the phone. "You were right, Amy. She did look wonderful, and almost jumped at the chance to start at the beginning. That means Lisa and I will be spending a lot of time shopping tomorrow. I'll bet I needs everything." I can tell you that she had a lot of guys chasing her when we went out in high school. She didn't realize the power she had over those guys. She could have had anybody as a boyfriend if she wanted to. "While you take care of that, I'll get us a reservation at Fours for Friday night. We might as well start with the best. We don't have a lot of time like we did." Okay, Amy, sounds good to me. The next morning, I took my shower and did my hair. Then, wearing just panties, I did my makeup. I put on my only bra, then a skirt and blouse. I wore a pair of my new flats. I was drinking coffee when my sister came over. She took a lot of measurements, had some coffee, then the two of us left for the mall. I know just what I need, Megan, and a few places to go to get what I'll need, so just bear with me, and let's make a few stops before we get to the mall. She looked at me and saw a small smile on my face. She drove as directed, coming to a small shop that stood between a dry cleaner and a lingerie store. Megan and I walked into the store as an old customer, and when the older woman saw me, she smiled. Lisa, it's been years since I have seen you. How have you been? Fine, Linda. I turned and introduced her sister. This is my sister Megan. She has convinced me to start at the beginning, just like you said I should. That's why I'm here. I have decided to let you work your magic. Well then, come in the back and let's get started, shall we? Megan followed us into the back room, not knowing what to expect, because the condition of the shop left a lot to be desired. Without prompting, I went into a changing booth and stripped naked. While I was doing that, Linda filled Megan in on what she does. I make custom prosthetic devices for people like Lisa that help them feel more feminine or masculine as required. I met Lisa when she was in high school and made a set of breast forms for her. She said it was a lark, but I knew she would be back, and I was right. I stepped out of the booth wearing a paper gown, going to the spot Linda directed. She smeared a gel on my chest, then used a spatula to put a heavy coat of a special plaster on my chest. We waited a moment for it to dry, then she carefully removed it. I had to endure lying on my back as Linda began her preparation by making a mold of my limp maleness. Then she used some medical tape after she pushed my testicles back into their sockets to hold them in place. Another mold was made that went from above my waist to below my groin, each leg done individually. After the molds were done and I had a skirt and blouse on, Linda went to work. First she measured me, bust, waist, and hips, consulted a chart, then made color tests of my skin. It will take only an hour. Why don't you get us some coffee, Megan, while I fit Lisa? After Megan had gone, Linda wanted to know if she wanted to be able to have sex. Megan say that if I'm going to be pregnant, then I have to have sex. So I guess the answer is yes. She nodded her head and went to work. The special panties were the hardest, of course, and while she worked on them, she mixed and poured liquid latex skin into the molds of my chest, and some more into pre-made molds she took off a shelf. For the panty, used another of her standard molds for the outside, put the male molds on the inside, and poured in the liquid latex skin. Using a scalpel, she cut and glued the pieces together and had me try them on. After I took them off, she then trimmed away the excess where she marked them. She examined her work and then removed the tape from my groin. You have to put these on a certain way, Lisa, and your male member has to be lubricated beforehand. She gave me a small tube of lubricant. Do you need any help? I shook my head no and went to the changing booth. The panties held my maleness up against my body and had a small tube that would allow me to relieve myself. The panties also made my hips wider, then went down my thighs a bit so that I would have the natural V-shape women have. In the back, I had to use an adhesive to secure the edges to my buns. The edges terminated in the crack of my butt and would allow relief but not detection. When I had my panties on, I went back out, and Linda attached the breast forms to my chest. Unless you knew, they seemed to be my own. The color, shape, and size were perfect for me and were the right weight, which gave a natural sag. Just then, Megan returned and saw my new breasts and almost dropped the coffee. Nice, aren't they, Megan? Before she could say anything, I took down my panties and showed her the rest. It was clearly evident that I looked like she did, right down to the small pubic triangle, including the lips of my brand new vagina, which could be clearly seen. How did you... she looks... They are made so she can function as a woman, with a man if she desires to do so, which, as we all know, is a requirement for her to become pregnant. The material is called liquid skin and will breathe, so she does not have to remove her breasts for at least a month before they would need to be cleaned. The panty, however, must be cleaned and flushed out at least once every 2 weeks. You mean to tell me she can have sex? Linda nodded her head yes and smiled. I had so many of my customers ask about such an item that I designed one. I have been using the same design for almost 5 years now. I got dressed, then paid Linda, promising to come see her again. If you knew about this place, why did you make your own pregnant look outfit? Because it was only going to be a week and I didn't want to spend the money. But after we talked, I called in and quit my job because this is going to last more than a month. And because I like being a woman, Megan. I always have. Since as long as I can remember, I wanted to be a woman. If I'm ever going to be a woman, then now is the time. If I decide I like it, I can always go through the program and make it permanent. Megan was finding out things about me that she never knew, but the changes must have seemed to be to the better, because she did not say anything. Besides, even though I had always wanted to do this, she was the one that had suggested that now was the best time. Later, in the mall, Megan watched as I tried on bras, helping me with fit and style, and bought several, plus panties in assorted colors, all high-cut French style. The bras were all trimmed in lace or were satin. Only one was plain, and it was peach-colored. I bought a waist nipper, garter belt, 2 corselets, and more pantyhose. Wearing one of my new bra and panty sets, we went to a department store where I bought some jeans, skirts, blouses, sweaters, 2 suits, 3 dresses, a swimsuit, shoes, and a nice coat. From there, we went to a jewelry store where I had my ears pierced, and I bought myself a watch and some basic jewelry. By the time we got home, we were both tired and flopped on the couch. I have to be back at work, Lisa, but I thought we could go out on Friday night and have a girls' night out. Okay, Megan, see you then. Contrary to what Megan thought, I knew what my sister's game was. The idea of my becoming a woman for an extended time might have been my own, but the only way she could have known about me wanting to look pregnant is if Amy had told her. And by the way she acted this morning, I was certain that seeing me looking pregnant was not as big a surprise as she let on. I had 2 days to get ready, and I intended to rock my sister and Amy back a bit. I removed all of the price tags and put the new clothes away, then changed and went out to buy something they did not know about. I wore a pair of my new jeans and a tight top over just panties and a bra. As soon as I walked into the dress shop, I saw the perfect dress, and they had it in my size. After I tried it on, I bought it and went back home, smiling to myself. It was going to be a fun night Friday. At home, I made sure that I had everything I needed, realized I needed one more item, and made plans to get it the next day. In the day of our night out, I spent the entire afternoon getting ready for my new debut. Starting with a long, hot, soaking bubble bath, I shaved my entire body, even thought I didn't think I needed it. Silky smooth skin was the goal, and I had attained that. Naked, I went into my bedroom and pulled on a pair of her new panties, the ones in fire engine red, and of course, they fit me perfectly, outlining my new sex, with just a hint of hair showing through the thin material that was stretched tight around my now wider hips and butt. My breasts were firm, yet soft and inviting, the soft brown nipples poking out just right. I sat at my vanity and began my makeup with a light coat of foundation, followed by the powder. I brushed away the excess, then took the light blue eyeshadow and drew a small line across each eyelid. I followed that with a soft gray, and over that, just under her eyebrows, a line of silver. Using liquid eyeliner, I made a thin black line on each lid. Then under each eye, I used a black pencil to completely outline my eyes. The mascara was also black, making my lashes longer, fuller, lush, and sexy. Smiling, I tweezed out some of my eyebrows, making them thinner. Then, with a brown pencil, I gave myself a higher arch over each eye. I carefully rolled my still damp hair in the rollers, using a pattern I had practiced with before. While my hair was setting under the net, I took my red corselet out and wrapped it around myself. The hooks and zipper closed it around me, making my breasts rise into the cups, laying there like two ripe melons, the nipples just out of sight. I pulled the pantyhose on, then made them smooth, enjoying the sight of my long, sexy legs in the mirror. My dress went over my head easily, the zipper making the material hug my figure perfectly. It was a sleeveless chemise with a square-cut neckline and a hem that was a good 3 inches above my knees. The smooth material looked shiny, but was soft and easy to wear. My breasts peeked out from the neckline. Unless I bent over, then they hung there, open to view, and would draw the guys like honey. I stepped into the red patent leather shoes, which had a single strap across my ankle, and were open at the toe to show my red toenails. When I took the rollers out, then brushed out my hair, I was very pleased with the results. Curls hung at my shoulders while my face was framed in waves of golden hair. My bangs, short, barely over my forehead, swept to one side. Smiling, I went to my jewelry box and took out the gold-trimmed red earrings and put them in my ears. I did not wear a necklace. A gold wristwatch and a single strand of gold chain on my right wrist and my left ankle were my only other jewelry. I drew a line of expensive perfume between my breasts and put a dab on her elbows and knees. Then, smiling, I dabbed a little on my panties. By the time Megan and Amy arrived, I was ready to go. My red purse held my money and driver's license, a small brush, and a tampon. Amy and Megan stood, looking at me, staring even, in awe at the woman I had become. Another woman rarely awed Megan, but I did, and I was her brother. I knew I exuded sex appeal, from my golden blonde hair to my trim, narrow waist, down to my shapely legs. My smile said it all, and now Megan understood exactly what Amy meant when she said that I could have any guy I wanted. Geez, I feel like a truck driver in a dress next to her. Me to Megan, but we did encourage her to do her best. Well, she's done it. I smiled at the way they talked about me. Megan, I've been dressing this way almost as long as you have. I should be good at it by now, and just like you, I can now be a female just like you. And prove it. In reality, both Megan and Amy had nothing to worry about. They had both worn dresses similar to mine, and were just as pretty, plus, they are real females. We would be a trio to drive the guys crazy. We walked into the club, and right away, we knew that we had every male eye in the house on us, watching 3 delectable chicks walk across the room. The sway of our dresses hinting at delights above the hemline, Amy, Megan, and I watched as the guys situated themselves, moving around the room, circling the wagon, so to speak. But their prey was inside the circle. One by one, we were asked to dance. Amy liked her guy, and they left early, leaving Megan and I to fight the horde by ourselves. I was really taken by one guy. It had been a long time since I had attempted to attract a guy, and while I had never once done anything with another guy beyond a kiss, I had to be with a man to get pregnant. I ignored the fact that I couldn't actually get pregnant, and simply played my role, the one I had always dreamed about. He was tall, with brown hair and eyes, a quick smile and easy manner. He asked if he could take me home, so I told Megan I was leaving, and not to my sister's surprise, I hung on his arm as we left the club. He drove me home, and I invited him in for some coffee. As soon as the door closed, he spun me around and pulled me close, kissed me, then pushed his tongue into my mouth. I responded completely, and he soon had his hand on my breasts. As I stood there, I felt the zipper of the dress come down, and I knew that I would submit to him. I took his hand and led him into my bedroom, where I could see his hardness, then reached out and unbuckled his belt. He did the rest and stepped out of his pants. I had never done this before, but I was ready and had worked myself up to this minute. My finger reached inside of his briefs, and I pulled them down. With his hardness open to the view, I stepped closer and unbuttoned his shirt. He had a massive, hairy chest, and surprisingly, it turned me on even more as he slowly drew me closer. He unhooked the bustier, unzipped it, letting it fall free. My breasts were firm and warm to his touch as he pushed me slowly to the bed. My panties went next, flying in the air as he tossed them over his shoulder. He smelled the bit of perfume I had added and smiled at me. Because I was all latex and foam, I used a greasy lubricant so he would slide into me easily. I held his hardness and guided it into myself. My legs were up in the air as he pushed himself into me, and as I nibbled on his ear, I felt him pumping his seed into me. He rolled off of me when he was done, but he was still hard, so I did something I had never in my life considered. I wiped him off, then kissed his member, making him hard as a rock again. This time he let me have my way with him, as I did not use the panty to please him again. Megan called at 11 the next day, and I answered the phone in a very chipper voice, excited to be able to relate what had happened. "He was great, Megan. I never had a clue before, but now I know why women have so much fun in life. We can lead the men around by their ego any time we want." "Yes, you're right, Lisa. Are you going out tonight again?" "I thought I would. Why?" "I met a guy that is perfect for you and wanted you to meet him. Why don't you get dressed and meet us for lunch at the cafe?" "Okay, an hour?" "Sure. See you then, Lisa." As I hung up the phone, I looked at the television and saw that it was going to be warm, so I went to my room to change. With Glenn Miller playing in the background, I changed my panties and put on my pantyhose. I did a minimal makeup job, wearing just enough foundation to cover, some powder, with eyeliner and lipstick and a bit of blusher. I brushed out my hair, then went to the closet and pulled out the yellow and white sundress in a slip. I pulled the slip up to my waist, then the dress went over my head, and I fastened the buttons up the front. It was knee-length, full-skirted, fitted through the bodice, hugging my breasts up to the low, round neckline. The twin straps that held it up looked sexy on my bare shoulders, and I smiled as I put on some white button earrings and a beaded choker necklace. I added my wristwatch and some perfume, changed my purse to the white one, then stepped into the white heels. I saw Megan and her friend at a table and walked over, the wind catching my skirt, blowing it up so that my white panties could clearly be seen before I could get the skirt under control. I sat next to Megan. "Lisa, this is David. He and I work together. David, this is my sister Lisa." We shook hands and I smiled at him. "David has a brother that can help you reach your goal, Lisa. David, why don't you tell him what you have in mind?" He smiled at me, a warm smile that I was sure led many women to his bed. "Mark is a doctor, Lisa. When I heard about your wanting to be pregnant, I remembered a story I had downloaded from the internet. No author, but what was outlined is possible, according to my brother. So whenever you feel you are pregnant, all you have to do is let me know, and Mark can take care of it for you." He handed me a copy of the story to read, then added, "If you need a father for the baby." I smiled at him, one of my 1,000-watt smiles. He was nice-looking, and if he worked with my sister, then he had a good job, which might be needed later on. "I'm free tonight, David." "Then I'll be over at 7. Clearly, Megan was astounded at how fast I had changed into such a beautiful woman, then the way I seemed to be able to draw a guy out with not more than a smile. She and I left David at the table, watching us as we walked away. "Damn, you work fast, Lisa. I've been trying to get him to ask me out for over a year with no success, and here you come with no more than a smile and take him out of the picture." "What can I say, sis? Some have it, and some don't." "Lisa, dear, you don't have it. All you have is rubber and some latex. I have the real thing. Being real is all in the hand of the beholder, isn't it?" David took me to dinner, and not wanting to seem a cheap woman, like the night before, I wore one of my suits. I was the picture of demure, quiet, beauty, and I enraptured David, and even though he knew I was a male, he obviously wanted to please me, take me to his bed, and be with me. I sensed this and played to his ego. He was nice-looking and every bit a gentleman. He held me close when dancing, but never put his hand on me anywhere but my back. Only once did he do anything. He kissed my ear and neck, drawing goosebumps down my back. He took me home, but did not come in. Instead, he left me breathless after kissing me goodnight. We saw each other every night the next week, until, on Thursday, I invited him to stay. He was a gentle lover, careful to drive me crazy with lust. He moved slowly until I could no longer stand it, and after lubricating myself, I pushed him on his back and climbed on his hardness. I rocked back and forth, occasionally stopping, which made him gasp in pain as he wanted to release, but I teased him until at last, he held me tightly and let himself go. With a shudder, he quit, and I rolled off. David knew he had the woman for him right then, even if a few changes were required. He made me an offer, and I told him I would think about it. The next day, I called Megan and told her what he had asked me. "Lisa, he has that look. I've seen it all week. He is in love with you. Take it, and make him yours if that's what you want." I hung up the phone and looked up the number of David's brother Mark, the doctor. He agreed to see me that afternoon. Then, after a complete examination, asked me what I wanted him to do. "I want to be pregnant. I always have. As you can see, all I have is rubber and silicone and a bit of foam, so I can be the woman David wants me to be." He stunned me with his next statement. "I can make you pregnant with David's baby if you want, but it will be a year before we can do that. Is that what you want?" I nodded my head yes, and he gave me a shot. "You can still wear those special panties for now, but in a few months the breasts will have to go. Okay?" I nodded my head yes again. I moved in with David 3 days later. Being a housewife was what I really wanted, and I made sure my man did not suffer in any way. He always had clean clothes, the house was spotless, and I took care of him in bed as well, learning many of the tricks most married women knew about. 2 months later, my breasts had grown to the point where I did not need the breast forms, and I began using a suction pump to make them more tender and larger. The doctor called me to his office and told me that after some discussion with some colleagues, they had decided that my stomach muscles had to be able to stretch to accommodate the baby, so I would have to have a false pregnancy before they would let me become pregnant for real. For the false pregnancy, he said he would use the system described in the paper David had given him. He made an appointment for me and asked if I wanted David there. Of course! He is going to be the father, so I expect him to be here for the insemination. A few days later, I was in the doctor's office, David holding my hand as the doctor gave me a sedative. When my senses returned, I was greeted with a different kind of pain. Sharp abdominal pains made me wrap both arms about my waist and gasp for air as the pain took my breath away. When I recovered, I noticed Megan was standing next to David. The doctor was standing at the foot of the bed and was first to speak. "Well, Lisa, you are about to experience the closest thing to pregnancy a man will ever be able to have. The doctors I contacted said it was too risky to actually plant an embryo in your belly at first, though it could have been done. After this, we can do that. What we have done is inserted a bladder between your abdominal muscles that will be filled with a liquid solution on a daily basis to simulate the weight gain of pregnancy. Since you would gain about 35 pounds over the 9 months, we will only be adding about 2 ounces of liquid a day. That way, it will take you a while to show, and your abdomen should be able to gradually stretch with the expanding bladder. Who knows, you may even get stretch marks." The doctor continued his explanation. "The tube will be used to add the fluid to the bladder. It will be covered to give you an outie belly button much earlier in your pregnancy than others, but it probably won't show through your clothing until you start to get bigger." Megan added, "Don't think you are going to get to wear maternity clothing right away. First-time mothers usually want to run right out and get their first maternity outfit once they know they are pregnant. But you should wait until you are officially told you are pregnant. So for now, simply consider you've been screwed." I did notice numbness in the lower abdomen, brushing my hand across the sensation. I felt a strange hardness, but it was not sensitive to the touch. I allowed my hand to travel to the center of my stomach, where I felt a hard button. To the air, I questioned, "Is it true?" My sister responded, "Yes." The doctor continued, You are now fitted with a bladder that will be filled at the rate of a normal pregnancy. There are some other surprises that you will notice as time goes by. An IV-type assembly was being used to start the fluid into the bladder planted in your belly. Later, it will be necessary to use a pump, but for now, gravity feed will work fine. Not enough fluid had been added to create any outward visual changes, but I was beginning to feel the pressure from the fluid build up. It was the beginning of a bloated feeling. The pressure on my stomach was also creating a feeling of nausea. It was my introduction to morning sickness. By the end of the first week, I had gained about a pound, and my tummy was beginning to feel hard. I even thought I could feel a slight swelling. My breasts had also begun to tingle from the constant stimulation, but had not noticed any increase in size. But sensitivity was sure up. I found it hard to believe that someday they would actually produce mother's milk. My tummy was hurting from the pressure of the additional fluid. I was beginning to feel the almost constant urge to go to the bathroom, and I now understood why many pregnant women complained about having to pee so much. At the doctor's that day, he said, "I've planned a few extra ounces so you'll have an even more bloated feeling. You'll probably be a little more uncomfortable for a while." I lay nude on the bed, waiting for the doctor to administer the day's ration of fluid. David was ecstatic as he watched me grow bigger and began to treat me like a princess. I could still take care of my man, and I was starting to enjoy being pregnant even more. But as the days went on and I grew bigger, I found that my clothes started to not fit as well as before. That morning, as I got dressed, I had to stretch the waistband of my panties over my stuffed belly, and I felt the elastic band cutting into my tender skin. Taking a small pair of scissors, I snipped the elastic and a slight V tore in the fabric. With the pressure gone, the panties felt much more comfortable. I called Megan at work and made arrangements for her to join me that night while I shopped for some maternity clothes. When Megan arrived, I left a note for David, and the two of us went to the mall, then into the largest maternity shop in the area. Amy saw me and hugged me while smiling broadly. She was very excited to hear that what she saw was not foam, but all me. After some talk, she left to tend to another customer. Megan asked me what I was looking for, and we made a list of things I would need. I was looking at jumpers and dresses when Megan came over with several panties in her hand. I hesitated slightly. The panties were beautiful. I could see the contracted roses that would blossom as the stretch panel was drawn over my swelling belly, and I would not have to snip the elastic for them to fit comfortably around my middle. Oh, was I anxious to wear those panties? I removed my skirt and caught my reflection in the dressing room mirror. When I was in the dressing room with Megan, I had removed my skirt and top. The reflection of the lovely maternity lingerie caught me by surprise. I had not forgotten I was wearing it, just wasn't used to it. At first glance, I thought someone else besides Megan was in the dressing room with me. The figure seemed much lovelier than I remembered. The nursing bra was lovely. The panties I was wearing with their cut V was also strangely attractive, but I was about to go from the unofficial V-cut panties of pre-pregnancy to official maternity panties. Panties that said to me, "You are pregnant." I slid the panties down my long legs, gracefully stepping out of them as they reached my heels. I now felt like a new mother-to-be. Standing, looking in the mirror, I was very comfortable with what was happening to my body. Megan offered a shoulder to steady me while I stepped into the panties. I slowly began to pull them on, enjoying the journey as they traveled up my legs. I was exploring every feeling as their soft silkiness electrified the new sensitivity of my skin while making their advance upward. Placing hands at each side of my waist, I guided the elastic silk over the mound of my belly, the floral pattern bursting into life as it was stretched to meet the shape of my abdomen. I stood and enjoyed the reflected image, floral maternity panties, plus a nursing bra, whose cups were now filled with only my flesh. With a hand held lightly on my tummy, I felt very pregnant. With things going so well, I felt as if I could live this way a very long time. I was so excited with the look of my figure, and knew it would only get bigger, and to my mind, better. I realized I looked pregnant in these underclothes, but knew the small shape would disappear once I added more clothes. I wanted to be big enough to leave no doubt that I was pregnant. Amy stopped by the changing booth with an already opened a package of pantyhose and handed them to me, smiling as I took them. Carefully, I started the hose up each leg, extending them to the top of my thighs before I tried to pull the panty over my belly. The pantyhose also had a panel insert that allowed them to comfortably expand around my middle. This just kept getting better. By the time I got home, Megan and I had expanded my maternity wardrobe to include panties and a few new dresses and jumpers. Lately, David would lay next to me each night and stroke my now swollen belly and talk to it as if I were actually carrying a child. I knew he would be a wonderful father when the time came that I would actually give birth to a real baby. I dreamed of the day and held my man close, afraid to lose him. The next day, as I got up to get dressed, I searched through the more feminine little mother outfits I had bought the night before. Everything I had bought had lots of lace and bows, and the colors were the traditional ones in maternity fashions. I found a white eyelet top with 2 side bows that could be adjusted to accommodate a growing figure. The collarless neckline was low enough to display an amount of cleavage that would dispel any doubts about me or my pregnancy. Then I picked out a plaid jumper with a gathered bust line. I was sure it would flow nicely over my budding belly. The pregnant curves were titillating, and I was in awe of my reflection. I was afraid this was a dream from which I would soon awake. It was what I always wanted, yet knew could never happen. Yet here I am, a wife and very pregnant to boot. I took the blouse from its hanger and held it to my chest, and with my right hand, I smoothed it over my belly. My baby bulge was very slight, but I could feel a discernible arch as my palm traveled the distance from my breast to a spot just above my legs. I slipped my arms into the blouse and admired the exposure of my maternity unmentionables with the unbuttoned garment. Not very much changed over the next several weeks. Each morning, after I pumped my breasts for an hour or so, I would go to the doctor's, and he would attach the apparatus that added liquid to my belly bladder. My belly was harder, and I felt fuller, but I wasn't as large as I hoped to be. But I did notice that I had to lean back to stay upright. A little more, it seemed, each day. By the end of the 3rd month, almost 12 pounds of fluid had been added to the bladder in my belly, and I was beginning to feel a strange sensation, as if there was motion within my makeshift womb. The first few times it happened, I didn't know what to make of it. When it became pretty regular, I decided to ask the doctor how it might be happening, and he told me what the explanation was. My womb, as they now called the bladder, was fitted with suspended weights that would float and move once the liquid level reached a certain point. It would start like the slight sensations a new mother would feel when she thought she felt motion, and become more active as the pregnancy progressed. I wouldn't be awakened at night with any sudden kicks, but during the day, in the course of my activities, I would have some constant movement in my abdomen. I didn't know how to thank the doctor enough. In comparison with my normally flat belly, I was now enormous. A distinct forward weight in breast flesh was a constant reminder of my engorging breasts that now were producing about 6 ounces of milk each day due to the doctor's required 1 hour of pumping. During our lovemaking, David would suckle a mouthful from those bloated breasts, then let it flood down his throat. The 3 and 4 inches heels that I loved to wear had to be replaced with flats or even sneakers because my pregnant waddle was accentuated when I wore heels. As I neared my 9th month, I marked the calendar 2 weeks before and 2 weeks after what I thought would be my due date. By the 9th month of pregnancy, I had gained almost 35 pounds, but had remained very active, losing many pounds of body fat, so the weight gain was substantial and disproportionate to my frame. The flesh buildup around my breasts probably accounted for a couple of pounds, but most of the gain was in the fluid that had been pumped into the artificial womb, stretching my abdominal skin paper thin. Many tiny blood vessels could be seen through the opaqueness of my skin. The pressure and stretching had caused some of those vessels to rupture, forming spider-like images over most of my bloated belly. The doctor gave me the date for my delivery, and I set out preparing my suitcase for after the birth. Several new nursing bras were on top. Megan had told me to be prepared to need them. My heart raced as I pondered having a baby at my breast, though knowing better, because I knew that would not be the case. This episode was to make my stomach larger so I could really carry a baby. Several nursing gowns were tucked inside my case, as were postnatal panty briefs. The usual cosmetics for making a woman feel good during times of distress were neatly arranged in the center of the case. I was ready for the last stage of my pregnancy. With David driving and Megan helping, we headed for the car. David in command, assisted by Megan, supported my arm as I struggled to walk. All of a sudden, I felt a strange wetness spread in her panties. I couldn't believe I had wet myself, but I said to David, "Slow down, you're making me pee my panties." "No," Megan said, "that's your water breaking. The bladder has been designed to release about a quart of fluid when agitated." David and Megan led me into the doctor's office, then to the birthing table. It was very similar to the examining table I had been on earlier, when the doctor had made me pregnant, but several additional supports had been added. The stirrups appeared to be hinged, and the foot of the table also looked like it could be lowered. There was a trough from about mid-table, curiously enough around the pelvic region, ending in a bowl shape at the foot of the table. David and Megan helped me onto the table and gently helped raise my legs into the stirrups. With my legs firmly captured, fear seized me. The doctor came in and gently soothed my head and told me that I would be a wonderful mother, and now that I had been stretched enough, he was going to see to it that I could be pregnant for real. Then he gave me a shot. The last thing I saw before drifting off was David blowing me a kiss. I awoke in a hospital bed, my legs still in stirrups. I raised the sheet and saw that the swelling that had been my false pregnancy was gone, but there was a mound of bandages in my groin, and I could see them because my belly was now flat. The nurse came in and gave me a breast pump. "This is just for a few days until your milk dries up. The doctor gave you a shot to help that. He'll be in to see you in a little while." I pumped out my breasts, now a full 36C, and got the usual 12 ounces of milk. When the doctor came in, he closed the door and sat next to the bed. "In order for you to be a mother, we thought it best that you be a woman, so we did the surgery while you were out. David tells me his attorneys have taken care of all of your legal documents, and that means you two can be married as soon as you're able." He saw the smile creep across my face and gave her the other news. "Your sister has donated an egg, and David has donated his sperm, so, as soon as you two decide, we will implant the embryo in your abdomen, and you can carry a real child to term and become the mother you always wanted to be." By then, I was crying with happiness. He gave me some instructions on the care of my new parts and told me I would be home in 5 days. "But wait a month before you and David—" "Okay, doctor, and thank you." A month after the hospital, I waited for him, skin smooth, perfume whispering from my neck, a red bow tangled in my hair, heels tapping against the floor. When David opened the door and found me standing there, everything between us changed. That night, the line we had danced around for so long finally broke. The days blurred into one endless discovery. Each touch, each glance pulled me deeper into the life I thought I could only dream about. And then, almost quietly, we sealed it, a small wedding, a promise, and a secret journey only we shared. The doctor's words echoed in my mind as the embryo was placed within me. This is real now. Warmth flooded me, not from the medicine, but from the truth my life was no longer borrowed, it was mine. 9 months later, in a sterile room filled with light, I heard the first cry of my daughter. Emily. In that moment, everything I had fought for, every risk, every transformation, it all crystallized into something no disguise could ever give me. I wasn't pretending anymore. I was a mother, a wife. And I knew, with terrifying certainty, there was no going back.